And when you ask these questions, when I was in high school, I was kind of shy. Wasn't very outgoing. And when I was on retreat, and we had a Q&A about something, this was at my senior year at LaSalle, the priest said, if you don't want to ask a question about yourself, ask a question that you know a friend of yours would ask if they were here. So you can ask a question on behalf of one of your friends, too, if you want to do that.
Okay, the floor is open. So if you have a question, I have a microphone. Emily, I'll get you in a minute. Let's get Steve.
So for one question I had is one of the reasons people who are for abortion, they say for medical reasons or healthcare. And I saw in the newspaper that out in California, they now say that physicians don't have to perform abortions. So they can have either a nurse practitioner or assistant pretty much perform abortions. And I don't understand how that, then they consider that like healthcare if they're letting non-physicians perform abortions.
Well, there's a lot of things that fall under health care where physicians aren't involved. For example, you go to CVS and get a flu shot. In a lot of cases, the health insurance that your folks would have would cover something like that. And that's really, to be pregnant, as I understand it, and I'm a man, I'm not a woman, so I'm never be pregnant, but just, if I can put my accountant's hat on for a second, my mom was pregnant 9 times, there were 2 miscarriages. And I know that my dad's major medical insurance covered part of that, but pregnancy is supposed to happen. Cancer's not supposed to happen, heart disease isn't supposed to happen. My partial tear of the lateral meniscus in my right knee isn't supposed to happen. But pregnancy is God's way of being fruitful and multiply, as we hear in the book of Genesis. So that's an argument that I don't completely understand, to be honest with you. But thanks for bringing that up.
So what would be your elevator talk?
What would be my elevator talk? Well, I share with you that it would be different now than when I was 16, 17, or 18 because of how life has changed. I would say that I'm glad, and I've said this before, I'm glad my mom and dad had a second child, because that's me. And I thank my mom and dad for having a second child. And I would share with people, I thank my mom for being my mom. And I would talk about the fact that, God has a plan in store for all of us. And God doesn't create trash. And God is involved in the process of a child being conceived. And that we need to try to step back and look with the eyes that God gives us about what the world's supposed to be like. That there are services available for women who weren't expected to conceive a child. And that most of the people I know who have children are very happy that they have children. So that's kind of the beginning. And then I suspect that if the door didn't open, and if it was somebody that I knew very well, I would say, let's go to lunch and continue the conversation. But those are the types of things that I would talk about. I wouldn't talk about the fact that you're killing someone, even though we believe that that's the case. There were some other things I was jotting down as I was preparing for tonight. Let me see if I can find them. I mean, some of the things I think would really turn people off would, even though these things are true, because I want to continue the conversation. You're killing babies. You're discriminating against the minority population. Should one person die so that others don't have to make sacrifices? Those things are very much a part of what we believe, but that would not be the initial thing I would say to someone. Unless it would be someone that I would know very well. But if it would be a complete stranger, as Stephen was saying, you're talking to somebody who is a complete stranger, it would tend to be something to be able to continue the conversation.
My question is...
You have to share, tell us your name.
I'm Liz.
Thanks, Liz.
My question is, how would you explain personhood beginning at conception, what we believe, to someone who doesn't believe in God, so might not believe in a soul?
Wow. I think I would try to figure out where they are with just life things, because someone thought that they were precious enough for them to be born. Their mother, most probably, and you may know about what their father's situation is, and maybe mom and dad are in the same house, and let's hope and pray that that's the case. I would say that your mom and dad thought so much of you that you're standing in front of me right now. And so they recognized there was something unique and special about you before you were born. And now here you are, you're my friend. Or you're someone I work with, whatever the case may be. So they saw something very important in you. And shouldn't that be the case with every child in the womb of every mother? And then I think what I would say would be, but I also am a Christian, and I believe that in the book of Genesis, if you read what happens on the first 6 days of creation, God creates the heavens and the earth, and all the way down to the time that humanity is created, and God saw that it was good, evening came, morning followed, and God saw that it was good, evening came, morning followed. When it comes to humanity, after the first person is created, God saw that it was very good. The fact that we're here is better than just a tree growing outside. Not that a tree growing outside with the sun shining in the sky isn't awesome, but it's very good. And so I would try to somehow work that into the conversation too, that there's something about the world that makes it better than without us being here. That's a good question, thank you. All these questions are good. I'll sing the South Fight song. Spare you.
Okay, but okay. So Liz asked my original question.
Who are you?
I'm Steven. But Liz asked my original question, so that was a good question. But okay, so you personally, how did people come to you and specifically ask why do you believe in why you are pro-choice and against against pro-choice, and what was your initial response? How did you really respond to that?
I don't know the last time someone came up to me and had a question about abortion, unless it was a Catholic who wanted to deepen their faith. And that's why when Brad contacted me, I was thinking, well, this is going to be thinking about the topic in a different way, because it's just kind of outside of my ordinary way of thinking. But this friend of mine that I mentioned, he's probably the last one, this is back in 1988, so before all of you were born, who came up to me and said, well, abortion's okay because it's not in the Bible. So if someone would come up to me tomorrow, it would be an adult. I think that the elevator speech I gave is kind of where I would begin. I get together with my nieces and nephews. Now there's great nieces and nephews. And they're awesome kids to be around. They ask me questions like, why do you wear that pink thing on your head? Why is it pink and not blue? Because blue is for boys, pink is for girls. And so when my great nephew asked me that, I told him it wasn't pink, it was fuchsia. And then he's only 5 years old, so he doesn't know what fuchsia is compared to turquoise, I would imagine. But then I finally said I wear it because I'm supposed to, just like you're supposed to follow the directions of your mom and dad and obey them, right? Yeah. I think that what I would do is I would simply give the elevator talk and talk about what blessings children are. And that even though, with 7 kids, my mom and dad went through some tough times. My dad always had a job. But I can remember there was one day that, now this, you won't appreciate this context, but my mom asked my sister to go to the store to get some groceries. And there was a department store right next to the Kroger store in Groesbeck. And we would go there to buy clothes from time to time. So my sister went and bought something that wasn't on my mom's list. And it wasn't something that we needed. It was an album of The Sound of Music. Okay? I still remember what it was. And my sister came home with it, and my mom said to her, you got to take that back, because it cost as much as 3 gallons of milk. I'll just put it in those terms. And my mom knew she needed 3 more gallons of milk with 7 kids by the end of the week. But my dad only got paid every Friday. And there wasn't a lot of money that week because there was some other emergency that came up. And so she told my sister, you got to take that back. There's money available to provide for people's needs, whether it's hospitalization, food. There's great organizations here in the city that help women who have conceived and weren't expecting it, from the Pregnancy Center East to Pregnancy Center West, to the Right to Life office in North College Hill. There's money available to help people, and people want to help. They truly do. So that's what I would say, something along that line.
Hey, I'm Anna Grace. I was wondering, the babies that are aborted, they haven't been baptized yet, so do they still go to heaven?
I would say the answer to that question is, officially, I don't know. Because the church still teaches there's theological opinions about limbo and whether or not there's a place where unbaptized people go. Now, limbo doesn't appear in the catechism of the Catholic Church. I would tell, I had that happen not with an aborted baby, with a baby that died in infancy before she was baptized. And I went with the person from our bereavement committee at St. Dominic Church in Delhi to plan the funeral with a very bereaved mother. I mean, it was one of the saddest things. And she asked that question, is my baby in heaven? And I said, I have this image of your daughter sitting on God's lap right now as we plan this funeral, because that child hasn't committed any sin. And we always hope that God is loving and God is merciful. And the mother felt terrible because the baby was 4 months old and she hadn't taken the steps to have the baby baptized. I couldn't assure the mother of that, just like I can't assure anyone other than the saints. You know, those are the only people completely assured of being in heaven. But I believe in a very merciful God. And I think that to say something like that, I have this picture of God, holding your child, is a great image to have. You guys have great questions. You're deep thinkers. Thank you.
Do we have time for maybe 2 more?
Sure. I'm here until, I just have to be at Mass at the Cathedral at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning.
I'm Joe Papalotto. I'm asking my question to my friend Anthony.
Joe, thanks a lot.
So in cases of rape, a lot of politicians who say they're pro-life will say they're pro-choice just because it's rape. How do you defend that against someone who's saying that you should abort a baby because it was a product of rape? How do you defend life in that situation?
Well, I think that politics is different in real life, because what the politicians are trying to do is they're trying to move to a point where abortion is outlawed in the country. So they're trying to take small steps to get to that point. It is a life, but I was reflecting on it as I was driving out today, that maybe those cases of rape and incest are just because they're violent actions against a woman. And I think that politicians want to honor the fact that those types of actions should not take place against any woman. And so they're willing, for political purposes, to be compassionate, I guess, in that particular way, even though that cuts a little bit against what the Catholic Church teaches. The Church would like to see all abortion outlawed, but once again, to get to that point, small steps have to be taken. That's my understanding of that position.
My name is Charles, or Charlie, whichever one you prefer.
Which do you
my question is that a lot of times people would argue that, having a baby can be, like you said, a threat to women's health. But I see a lot of, I get a lot of emails from Lifesite News. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a Catholic pro-life news site. And I get a lot of incidents where a woman is bleeding, a whole lot, where they're very injured near the point of death because of an abortion gone wrong. So, but if I were to say that, I don't know whether or not this would be the best choice of words, but would it be statistically scientifically correct to say that an abortion is more risky than having a child?
Well, I haven't seen any statistics on on that. I think that I have a sister, if I could just show a witness. This is a very tragic thing, but my youngest sister died 3.5 weeks after she gave birth to her only child because of the complications from giving birth. And but her call in life was to be a mom. And so she knew she was going to have a high-risk pregnancy. She had doctors who helped her with the pregnancy, but God still called her home. And it's very sad. And my niece is a great young lady. She's 14 years old, and she's thriving in high school and just full of life. And I don't want to say my sister traded her life for my nieces because then I would be playing God, and I don't want to play God. But pregnancy and delivery is still a very, what's what I'm looking for, risky thing. Even in this day and age, with all the marvelous medicine that we have, and it just seems amazing to me, and I'm not a doctor, I'm an accountant who became a priest, but when women schedule C-sections because they want the baby to be born on a particular day because the grandmother was born on that day, and the doctors allow that to happen rather than having a child naturally, I guess, inquiring minds want to know if that makes sense because, God had a plan for how children are born. And it wasn't by C-section, it was by the way God intended. There are, the one thing that in this website I went to, which is pros and cons on abortion, these folks collect data from both sides and they're kind of independent. That's what they were saying is modern abortion procedures are safe. The risk of a woman's death from abortion is less than 1 in 100,000, is what they say. Whereas the risk of a woman dying from giving birth is 13.3 deaths per 100,000. It's 1 out of every 100,000. The risk of a woman dying from giving birth is 13.3 deaths per 100,000. So it's 13 times more likely that you'll die giving birth compared to having an abortion. Now, who knows how valid these statistics are, but I guess I go back to my sister's witness. When Father Don McCarthy presided at her funeral, he called her martyr to motherhood. That was the term he gave my sister because she wanted to bring life into the world with her husband, and life did come into the world, but God called my sister home. But it's still the way that God had planned for humanity to be fruitful and multiply was by giving birth, and we have to honor that. If you read stories of people who lived in the 1800s, a lot of women died in childbirth because the modern methods aren't what they are right now. But with good prenatal care and a mother who's able to see a doctor as her pregnancy continues, a lot of risk is taken out. I would never recommend having an abortion because it's 13 times more likely for a mother to die in childbirth than compared to having an abortion. And I think I honor my sister's memory by saying that too. Thanks.
Bishop, we just have one more.
We can have 2 more. This is benevolent. It's a brand new year. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad.
Hi, my name is Emily. I was wondering, I have a friend who we've had kind of debates about like abortion and everything, and a lot of times people who are pro-abortion or pro-choice, they kind of justify it by like, well, what if the mom has a medical issue that could kill her in childbirth? And I feel like it's not like they're not trying to like justify it like that, but how do you kind of tell them that's still not right without saying anything like super barbaric or something? Because I was like, I don't know.
Well, I think that the one way people argue is they think of these examples that aren't relevant to a situation. I think. When I was, if I can give you an example, when I was studying canon law at Catholic University, we got down to the actions a priest has to have in order to consecrate the Eucharist. Okay, so then someone in the class asked the question, what if the priest loses an arm in an accident, he only has one hand? Can he consecrate the Eucharist with one hand? Or what happens if he loses both hands in an accident? Can he consecrate the Eucharist with both hands? Well, I've never seen a priest who's lost both hands. And this discussion in class went on for 15 or 20 minutes. And, you know, me being shy with John, I was thinking, this will end at some point. Why don't we pray for something beneficial? Because this conversation isn't going very far. But inquiring minds want to know. But I do think sometimes the arguments we have, or the discussions we have, get into such circumstances and situations that are not very practical. And I also think that in a case like that, you know, a doctor or someone is making a decision that perhaps should be reserved to God. I mean, that's kind of the way that I would look upon that. I would hope that if a mother was mentally ill, that there would be some sort of opportunity for care for her as well as for the child. And with, I wish Father Earl Fernandez was here because he teaches at the seminary, and he was a former, I mean, he was a medical school student. He could talk more about an answer to that than I could. I'm kind of struggling a little bit. But I think we have to talk about most of the situations and circumstances where abortions are involved. That's a very good question. I know that there are people who have tough pregnancies. Because of the tough pregnancy my sister had, I try to especially remember them in prayer.
Hi, my name is Mary. Yeah, I have a question about birth control. Like, how do you speak to like your friends? Like, because I go to outdoor school. Like, how do you tell them that like it's wrong? Like, how do you compare it to that of an abortion? You know what I'm saying? Like birth control, like in a relationship, and like how do you just tell your friends like it's wrong? You know, who would think it's a threat to their spouse?
Well, the answer that I'm going to give you is a 1970s answer, which is a lot different than this time. And maybe some others can help me with this because I don't have children and I don't know the best answer. But what my mom and dad told me was it's wrong. And I recognized the fact that it would bring dishonor to my family if I would be the father of a child and I wasn't married. I was taught that fornication was wrong, premarital sex was wrong, that God had something better in store for me at that point in my life, that sexual intercourse should be reserved until marriage takes place because that's a total commitment of a man and a woman together. And I had known as I grew up and saw things happen, especially when I was at Miami University, where people would break up for no reason, and somebody would be devastated because they broke up with someone else. You know, I can remember with one of the guys that I lived with that he broke up with his girlfriend, and they had been sexually active. And she tried to reach him. Now, this was once again back in the day when there weren't cell phones, and there were 55 of us living in this fraternity house, and there were only 4 telephones. So when the phone rang on your corridor, somebody had to answer that. I guess I was around more than I needed to be, but I always seemed to be answering the phone. But his girlfriend was calling him every hour, trying to talk to him. And he wouldn't take phone calls. And she would try to find him where he usually studied, would change his usual study space. He just avoided her. And he crushed her. I can remember more than one conversation. She was crying because, and he had, if I could use this word, he had dumped her for somebody else, somebody more attractive. And that's not fair. So I don't know if you have any, maybe that could be a question for your small group discussion, I don't know, or a future small group discussion about how do you talk with your friends about avoiding premarital sex.